Hello, I'm Caro Hart from Dorset Community Action, and I want to tell you about a project that we did in the end of 2022 to the beginning of 2023. This was aimed at working with village halls and community buildings to try and get them to think about becoming lower carbon and to think about their carbon footprint. It was funded by Together for Our Planet, and we were very pleased to use our existing relationships to do this piece of work. The project aimed specifically were to help organisations to assess their rental impacts. So thinking about some of the ways of measuring and also to produce a plan for making changes from the very small to the very large, and to celebrate the work that's already being done, which is a huge amount of work that's being done in Dorset. And we wanted to be able to develop a guide that was simple, that was accessible, and that didn't necessarily make everybody go through the low-level stages if they were ready for more advanced working. But we also wanted it to develop skills to help organisations to think through how they could support this work. The methodology we chose was very co-production. We advertised really widely for anybody who was interested, really, to come to the meetings, to comment on the papers, to comment on the draft resources, and also to contribute what they knew about current networks, current work that was happening. We then used some of those connections and some of those stories to create some interviews, which you'll find on our online resource, from organisations who've already done some work in this area, or who have written around it, or who are doing something particularly interesting, such as a wellbeing garden. And that includes conversation with experts, people who really know their stuff. I will make sure that you get a copy of these slides, and you can look for yourself. And these are the three resources. The online resources, the discussions and the documents, and you can see the process of how this was developed, but also the recordings of the interviews that I just mentioned. We also created two resources, the First Steps resources and the brilliantly named Next Steps resources, which I'm going to go through in a moment. We presented this data at the Dorset Village Halls Association AGM last year, and that stimulated some really interesting discussion. We would like to get involved to do more of this sort of thing, and at the end I'll show you a little bit of how we've used this data. But in the first instance, I want to go through, not in tremendous detail, the First Steps toolkit. Now, this was really introduced in simple language. We were very passionate in our discussion about the fact that what we needed to be talking about was not necessarily climate emergency, low carbonisation and so on. What we needed to be talking about was all the stuff around that, the sort of co-benefits that are about well-being, about community, about getting people involved and saving money as they went. So village halls could save money by increasing their installation, getting involved with solar power, and also they could contribute to their community, for example, with applying for one of the electric vehicle charging points. And this is the first slide. This is just saying to people that this is a journey and you can start wherever you like. And every organisation is different. So what we've done is organised this, as you'll see in a moment, so that people can skip things that they've already got in place. If they haven't got them in place, there's advice and information and links and references to follow up. What we've tried to do is not reinvent the wheel, but to pull together all the information that we found is out there. So I suppose the other thing to say is that these slides are of necessity because we have had no funded time to update them. They're a little bit out of date now. And if anybody wants to update them, please get in contact. But they are still really good advice. So what we wanted to do was say, do you know what you want to achieve? Ask a question. And if the answer is yes, you don't have to read this slide. And so you can just skip to the next one. And if you don't have a policy, stop and do this, or skip to the next one. So each of these has a yes, no, so that people don't have to sort of slog through a whole lot of information they've already got. And what we've tried to do in all of these is to use the experience of the people who were in the group in the discussions. And for instance, we've drawn together some common starting points and some experience that people had around environmental policies. All of this is shown and given freely on our online resource for this, including templates and guidelines and so on. We've talked about policies, we've talked about doing an action plan, and again, drawing on other people's expertise. Are you more energy efficient? Can you manage waste and so on? And each slides make practical suggestions and give lots of links, not only to external pieces of work, but also stuff that we at DCA have got around managing risk, around budgeting, around policies, because we've got that information in place. So why not use it? And again, simple steps, a review of your own space, thinking about sitting down as a group or as a committee and thinking about the assets. All of this helps a village hall or a community organisation to work through where they're at, what they've got, and so on. They can also think more widely. What are their community assets? Who do they know? I mean, the gardening club, the scouts. Who can they get involved? And again, some suggestions of ways to get the community involved, to build on the assets that are there within the community. The Green Champion, join ACRE, of course, and sign up to Low Carbon Dorset, to DCAN, and also organisations like the Energy Savings Trust. And I'm sure we can add to those, but they're a very good starting point for most organisations. So that's the one. We were funded in part by the National Lottery for this, and that is the first step toolkit. And there, if it would be useful, is my email. And we've said that people can use these slides, they can use the toolkit in any way they wish, but they need to give us a bit of credit. Moving on to the next step toolkit, very much set in the same sort of way, but it goes into the bigger issues. So we've looked at Zero Carbon Dorset's model, just to get people started to think about all of the sorts of issues that they can get their teeth into. Similarly, we've used LTD's step-by-step guide, and Energy Savings Trust has got information on how to measure the carbon footprint. And I know there are better measures around now. And also what we haven't got in here is a social value measure, which is something here at DCA we're working on, how to measure the social impacts, the co-benefits of environmental work. You'll be aware that there's all kinds of energy schemes. There have been for a couple of years. And particularly we've highlighted here the new energy efficiency scheme that Groundworks is leading on, which means that village halls can go for capital funding, but they do need an independent energy assessment. So that I did update. We've also started thinking about things like communications, the sort of wider community engagement issues, and really getting people digging down now into running a wellbeing campaign, putting on an open day, doing a community consultation about wildflowers or green gyms or the lovely hedgerow project or something like that. And that's this gets to the point where village halls and community groups are using their own resources and by now their own knowledge to really motivate other people within the community, using their position, putting together successful days as we've seen happen, and getting photovoltaic suppliers and installers down who can talk to the whole village. Is there a scheme here? And we've seen, we were talking when we were designing this about some very successful sort of schemes. Related to the business, measure the impact, and here's some ideas for where to find out about funding. And of course, it can be few and far between, particularly for the smaller initiatives. There's big funding, but quite often there's the kind of middle-sized funding can be a bit lacking. And again, we advise people, make sure you've got your risk analysis, your budget, and so on and so forth. So that was our project last year. This year, what we're doing is a project again with village halls around the acre hallmark. We've used the data from the low carbon project we did last year in part to help us to get this piece of work, because the hallmarks are checklists which a village hall or community resource can go through and measure themselves against. Now, how does the committee work? Do they have all the right licenses? Do they have their budgets, their minutes, and their up-to-date constitution and things? It also, Hallmark 3 looks at how they work within their communities, which comes right back to what we were saying about how Village Hall can influence people with a strong low carbon agenda themselves. Hallmark does talk about an environmental audit. It's not a huge part of the current process, but we're using our expertise and experience from the low carbon project to sort of beef that up and to work with village halls in the whole of Dorset to try and get them really thinking about environmental issues. So that's what we've been doing at Dorset Community Action. And thank you for listening. And I'm happy to take any questions by email if I'm not there present in the room. Thank you. Bye-bye.